Right, so let's look at project management methods. This is a very key part of project management, and any project management professional who is worth their salt really needs to understand this. And I'm telling you, if you have an understanding of the various project management methods that there are, you know what work, where they work best, you know what projects do they work best for, what industry are they usually used in, and once you get a sense of what the method is, what the different key documents that need to be kept alive in that process, you know what tools work best for them. If you get those things underneath your belt, you are very much on your way to having a good career. Yes, I was about to say that, you know, you're pretty much there in terms of delivering your project. That's a different case entirely. You understand? So yeah, let's get into this. So no two projects are exactly alike, and because of this, we need various ways to be able to deliver them. Project management methods are the various frameworks. Some people call them methodologies. In fact, there's a whole argument or case over whether something is a methodology or whether something is a framework. If I were you, I'd just let the experts battle that one out. The fact of the matter is that it is something that helps you to deliver your project, and that's all that matters. You know, I think the academics amongst us in the project management world are the ones that battle it out whether something is a methodology or whether it's a framework. So anyway, these are things, tools that we use to essentially roadmap our projects. So let's look at PRINCE2. Okay, so PRINCE2 is an acronym. Actually, it's Projects in Controlled Environments. It's used in many countries worldwide, including the UK, Europe, and Australia. It was actually first developed by the UK government because it became quite obvious that having a set of guidelines for major projects would do everybody the world of good. And that's another word for these things as well: guidelines, frameworks, methodologies. You get the drift. So PRINCE2 is described as a process-based approach for project management, which means that it's made up of a structured set of activities designed to accomplish value or benefit for the project beneficiaries. So PRINCE2 is a framework that is made up of 7 processes, 7 themes, and 7 principles. Now, the processes are as follows: starting a project, directing a project, initiating a project, closing the project, managing a stage boundary, controlling the stage, and managing product delivery. These processes are what give you a sense of where the project is at and what should be taking place at that moment in time. Okay, so PRINCE2 also has 7 themes, and the themes give you a sense of those aspects of the project that need to be addressed continually throughout the project. These themes are the business case, organization, quality, lessons learned, plans, risk, change, and progress. You would usually have a document or a set of tools to help you keep track of each one of those themes. And lastly, PRINCE2 has 7 principles. Let's call those like good practices, best practices. Okay, so the 7 PRINCE2 principles are continued business justification, learning from experience, defined roles and responsibilities, managing by stages, managing by exception, being focused on products, and then the final one is being able to tailor your framework to suit your project environment. Okay, so I've got a whole video on the whole PRINCE2 framework and how it can be used. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about that in this video. All right, so let's look at another framework. It's called Managing Successful Programs, and essentially, I would say it comes from the same stable or household as PRINCE2. You know, it's follows sort of the same sort of approach, if you like. So this framework also has processes. It has and also has guiding principles to keep the program focused. So the processes act as phases and give you a sense of where the program is at any given time. So the processes are identifying a program, defining a program, managing the tranches, delivering capability, realizing benefits, and closing a program. So those are the processes within a program. Okay, that's just jumped up there. Let's still stick with managing successful programs for the minute. So with managing successful programs, those are the different processes. Those processes are also called a transformational flow. Now think about it this way. If you remember when I talked about projects, what make a program, they're usually made up of projects and work packages or work streams. And the reason why they are a program, or they described as a program of works, is because really and truly what's happening is what needs to happen is something that is usually referred to as transformational. So usually when you're delivering a project, it tends to be maybe one or two or maybe as many deliverables as you like. But usually when there is a program of work needed, it tends to transcend across more than one kind of activity. So in other words, you might have a situation whereby not only do you have to change your processes, you've got to change your people, you've got to change your systems. It requires a collection of various expertise, should I say, and that's why they call it a program of works. And so when those processes are happening, as you're going through the motions of managing the tranches, delivering, you begin to deliver the capability, because at the end of the day, when you think about it, the projects will be doing their own thing simultaneously amongst one another. So let's say, for instance, you have customer services, and that's the program that's been the program is about revolutionizing how your customer service works. Then you could have a situation whereby one project is training the staff. Another project could be looking at putting in a new system for customer relationship management. Another project could be looking at building a new center. So there's nothing to say that they all have to wait for one another to deliver. You know, the training could have completed before the center gets built. The system could have been completed before the center is complete, before the center is opened up. And as a result, once the training is happening, they don't have to wait for the center to be able to start, you know, servicing the customers, you know. So it means that you're delivering, you begin to deliver capability, you begin to actually realize results, and the program is not quite finished yet. So that's why they call it a transformational flow. Things are already happening, things are already transforming in that space. Okay, this is also the kind of intervention that you would need to bring about change in not only organizations, but, you know, just generally across the board. Okay, and so we also have governance themes. That's basically how are these are the sorts of how would I call it, like what would be the way that the work that's happening within this space be, how is it being managed? Okay, so what are those different areas that we need to keep an eye on to ensure that we're maintaining a disciplined approach? Okay, so the themes include vision, leadership, stakeholder management, benefit management, blueprint design, and delivery, planning and control, the business case, risk and issue management, quality and assurance management, and program organization. So again, there's a separate video that really goes into the whole framework and shows you how these moving parts actually work. And lastly, with managing successful programs, we also have principles. I did say to you that it's very similar to PRINCE2, but PRINCE2 is primarily about managing projects, and this is about managing programs. And so we have principles. I describe the principles as sort of like mindsets, mindsets, rules that the program must follow. So the principles are leading change, communicating the future state, managing benefit realization, adding value, designing and delivering a coherent capability, learning from experience, and remaining aligned with corporate strategy. Now, with the principles, it's all about, like I said before, about mindset and having certain kind of like it's sort of like having areas that you just do not budge when it comes to how that program must be run. Okay, so let's take the last one, being aligned with corporate strategy. So let's say a program is being delivered for an organization, by the organization, and that organization, they are very much focused. It's part of their DNA, should we say. They're very much focused on reducing their carbon footprint. In fact, the whole ethos of the company is about being green, having sustainable practices, and so on and so forth, right? So they are going to have their program should be aligned with that principle. That's how we do things around here. So, for instance, they're going to be very much, their program is going to be such that, they're possibly not going to be flying around everywhere or taking trains, taking cabs and everything, because that's how the organization is, so the program should not be run in any other way. And it's possible for the program to wander away from that, ideal. Because say, for instance, you get contractors in to run that program for you, to deliver that program for you. And they're very much of the mindset that if they have to go to Japan, they have to fly out to Japan. They prefer face-to-face conversations and so on and so forth. You have to bring them in line. You have to be able to say to them that, no, that's not how we do things around here. Because it's very possible that the outcomes and the outputs and the transformation that you're going to deliver is not going to be in line with how we do things around here. So that's an example of principles, how a program should be run. What's the mindset behind it? How do we do things around here? Okay, so, and then lastly, we have Scrum. Scrum is a type of agile framework. Okay, so this is a framework for projects that need a high level of flexibility, mostly software design, system designs. Those are the type of projects that very much enjoy being in sort of like an agile environment. When you think about software, when you're developing software at ground zero, you're not quite sure the features that they're going to have. And the idea is, don't get so caught up in trying to figure that out at ground zero. If you've got 2 features that this particular software is going to do, go ahead, develop them, get them out there, get users using them, get them giving you feedback. That's the whole idea. Okay, and it might be that you had a particular feature in mind and then it didn't quite work out. Get rid of it, find another feature. That's how the whole agile mindset is supposed to work. Okay, and so again, we have a video that goes into a lot of depth into how the Scrum framework can be used. But essentially, the Scrum framework is made up of 3 parts: Scrum ceremonies, Scrum artifacts, and Scrum roles. When using the Scrum framework, there are only 3 roles: the product owner, the Scrum master, and the team. The team will be made up of a number of specialists needed to deliver the outputs. So let's say, for instance, that particular project requires a designer, an architect lead, requires a programmer. You know, that team will be made up of all of those people. So they, with all of them together, will be able to produce one complete feature as a self-contained team. Okay, so they do the work, and they're very much self-managed. They manage themselves. The Scrum Master acts as a servant leader to them, basically removes blockages and challenges, and is that conduit between them and the other aspects, so they can get on with doing their work. And then we have the product owner. The product owner is kind of like the visionaire of the feature, of the product. He or she understands exactly what this product needs to do and will be giving them the guidance. So that's the Scrum roles. And then we have the Scrum ceremonies. The Scrum ceremonies include the sprint planning meeting, the sprint review, daily stand-up meetings, and the sprint retrospective. And then we have the Scrum artifacts, which are the product backlog, the sprint backlog, the release plan, and the retrospective log. So the Scrum artifacts are basically the documents that are produced within the Scrum environment, so that the work that's being done can be tracked and monitored and reported in the right way. Okay, so what we've done here now is just giving you a sense of what 3 very common project management methods. There are more details in other videos on our channel. Do have a look at them and begin to get these under your belt. And there are many out there. Okay, there are quite a few out there. The idea is just to give you a sense of what are these frameworks and methodologies supposed to do. The point is that if you get a sense of at least 2 of them, the others will make sense. All right. Now let's move on to our next topic. Okay, so when I work with project management professionals, I always suggest that delivery frameworks are one of the areas that they should come to really spend some time with and understand how they work. If they're already working in particular industries, I always suggest to them that have a look at those frameworks that are favored by the industry that you work in, or the kind of products or outcomes that you work with. Look at the delivery frameworks and get a sense of what they are, how they work, and in other words, really master them and become familiar with them. So what are frameworks? When we talk about delivery frameworks, just think of them as a set of guiding principles and processes for managing your project. So they're essentially made up of a framework. A delivery framework is made up of a life cycle, a set of templates, and suggested applications. Now, they don't necessarily, the applications don't necessarily come with the framework, but they're usually suggested as these would be useful for when you are managing your project using this particular framework. So a life cycle is made up of stages or phases, sometimes they're called. They're also made up of, within those stages and within those phases, different activities are happening. And in between each stage, there's what we call a stage gate or a checkpoint. At those points, it's an opportunity for the project team to be able to report to their project board and make sure that things are going as planned. So that's a life cycle in a nutshell. We're going to go look at them a bit more closely in a moment. And then we have templates. For every framework, there is a set of templates that come along with them. So if you're looking at an agile delivery framework, there would be a number of suggested templates that you would need as you are navigating this life cycle, as your project is navigating the life cycle. And then we have applications. Now, applications don't necessarily come with the framework, but you will, as you're learning that framework, get insights from people that are already using the framework, people who have developed the framework, that these are the best tools to use when you are using this particular delivery framework. Okay, so now let's look a bit closer at life cycles. So a life cycle within the framework can be of a waterfall nature, or it could be of an agile nature. So this is a very basic life cycle that you're looking at. And as I said before, they consist of stages or phases. Around here would be the stage or the phase gate. And as you can see, it's sort of like that space between those two phases where the project team has to check in with their project board and, have a conversation, review the project, and make sure that all is going well. And this is essentially what a very basic project life cycle looks like, and it's modeled, and most project life cycles are modeled on this concept. Every life cycle starts. After they have started, there would be that opportunity for the project team to be able to articulate back to the project board that this is what we're delivering, these are the outcomes, these are the outputs, are you in agreement? They will say they're in agreement, and then they move to a planning stage. Now, in some cases, this planning stage is called the initiate stage, and essentially what's happening in that stage is that now that this team has been given the green light to go and deliver, they now have to get ready. They now have to be mobilized. That's essentially what happens within a planning stage or an initiate stage. And then once all of that is done and they're good to go, then they would check in again, and then they would move on to the execute stage. Now, again, in most cases, most project life cycles now begin to diverge at this stage, because the way we would execute a software project would be very different from the way we would execute a project that is trying to deliver a transformation, for instance. So execute covers a number of activities, and it's at this stage that you will see many life cycles begin to diverge, and includes sub phases within that, and this is the reason why I was saying that make a point of understanding the frameworks within the particular industry that you're aiming for, and because you would have very particular phases for that execute stage, dependent on the industry you're working for, dependent on the products or the outcomes that you are trying to work with. And then once that stage, the deliverables are now apparent and they are ready to be handed over, then we would check in again and then go into the close phase. Now, a lot of times the close phase is ignored. There isn't a proper shutdown of the project. There's not a proper handover of the deliverables and the outcomes to the business as usual, as they say, that team within the organization that's going to receive these outputs. Sometimes that doesn't really happen very well, but a close phase is just as important as any other phase within the project. Now, this life cycle is the type of life cycle that you will find in an agile sort of delivery framework. It's called iterative and incremental in nature. Let me explain what that means. So when we talk about something being iterative, you're talking about a particular process that is happening over and over again. And as that process is happening over and over again, it is producing something on an incremental basis. So let's go through this life cycle. So usually what happens when you are operating within an iterative and incremental type of environment, you do high level planning. You get a sense of what is it that we need to deliver at a high level. So when you have finished looking at what you need to deliver at a high level, what you would usually end up with is something that could be referred to as features. So you have a product and you're looking at its possibilities. What could this product possibly do? Those are usually referred to as features. And once you have gone through that high level planning, you then have what you call the high level requirements. You get a sense of what you need to deliver on a higher level. Now, once that is done, you then go, now these features now need to be broken down into a granular type of task level. And that's where you would go through the granular planning type of phase. Now, once those tasks are broken down and the team that are working on it understand what needs to be produced, then they would go through various activity, and this could be designing, coding, development, and then once all of those things are developed and coded and they all come together, then they would have to be tested. Now, once they are tested, then there would be this part of the process where the project team would present to what they have so far to the end users. And the end users would then, have a bit of a demonstration. If, say, for instance, it was a website, they would go and see, they would look at the prototype that's been produced for them. They would click around, give feedback to the project team. The project team will take that feedback and make the product even that much better, tweak it if necessary, and then that version of the product will be ready for a release. Okay, and once that's released, that iteration has been completed. Right? Now, they would then go through that cycle all over again, and that's what we call an iteration. So just think about it like you started with feature 1 over here, and they've gone through that entire circle, and then they will do the same for feature 2, they'll do the same for feature 3, and they'll do the same for feature 4. At some point, the product only existed with just one layer, and as they went through each and every iteration, they were increasing the features of this product, and they were therefore increasing the potential of that particular product. And this is why we refer to this particular life cycle as iterative and incremental in nature. So going through this over and over again, the features are being added incrementally. That same product has more features, and it's this type of life cycle that is used in agile development.